position.
That's right. But not like not having this many more going forward.
Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Bennington School District for September 6th to order. Catherine isn't here, I guess, right now, but I think we have all the new hired teachers, and we're going to ask the principals to introduce the new teachers for the Bennington School District.
And paraprofessionals.
And paraprofessionals.
And administrators.
Thank you. First off, Jerry O'Connor, who is a new assistant principal, had a prior commitment, so he wasn't able to break that. He would be a face that I would be introducing, but he's well-known in town, and you probably know who he is anyway, so I just want to make sure that I apologize for his absence. He does also, but that's the first name. Next, we have Alexandra Ward, who prefers to be called Allie. Allie actually was working with us last year as a year-long replacement teacher for a leave that someone had taken. Then we hired her on as kindergarten teacher for this year. Ellie, I don't know if you want to make a few comments about your background at all, or?
I'm from New Hampshire. I went to school at St. Michael's in Vermont, and then I've been in Vermont since then, so I'm excited to be back again for another year.
Welcome back. Okay. Thank you.
Next is Lisa Flynn. Lisa was a paraprofessional in the building for a number of years. She's a new third grade teacher, so we're pleased to have her. Lisa,
Hi.
any comments?
Well, I grew up in Bennington, and I went to Mount Anthony. I moved away, and this is a second career for me, so I'm happy and thrilled to be here in Bennington as a third grade teacher. Thank you.
Welcome.
And next is Valerie Hope. Valerie is a kindergarten teacher for us. We're pleased to welcome her to the staff too.
I'm originally from Central Massachusetts. I came to the area, the Western Massachusetts, to attend MCLA. I taught at Stanford Elementary School for 4 years, and I'm glad to be teaching here.
Thank you. Well, sort of, because Allie was kindergarten as a replacement last year. But if you want to say officially hired as tenured people, yes.
You good? You done? So at Molly Stark, we're really excited to have our new staff here. And some are new to Molly Stark, some are new to the district. So first one I'd like to introduce is Peggy McLenathan. Peggy is a reading title teacher. She has transferred to us from Mount Anthony, and we are greatly glad that you are with us working in grades 3, 4, and 5. And I don't know whether you want to say anything, Peggy?
Thank you for inviting me here, all of us here tonight. I'm excited to be in title reading. I worked as a special educator in Vermont for several years. I live in New York, but Vermont is where I spend my time, and I'm really excited to be joining your crew, so thank you.
Great, we're glad to have you, Peggy. Next we have Lisa Petrak. Lisa was hired as a second grade teacher and has actually spent quite a bit of time at Molly Stark in different capacities, some long-term subbing, some partners in reading, and we welcome her to our second grade classroom this year. Very excited. And Lisa, don't know if there's anything you'd like to share with us?
Sure, thank you for inviting me. I've lived in Bennington for about 17 years. My husband and I have 3 children who are all in the Bennington School District system. I've been subbing at Molly for about 4 years in different places, and I'm very excited to be here. I just finished up my master's in elementary education over at MCLA.
Thank you. Very good. And next we have, okay, great, thank you. I thought that was you, Valeria. Another second grade teacher new to Molly Stark is Valeria Crossley. And Valeria comes to us with a great experience and a great background, and we're thrilled to have her join our team. And Valeria, did you want to just say hi?
Sure. Hi, and thank you as well for inviting me. I was excited to come and actually get to meet the board. I had spent my last year up in Fairhaven. I had moved to New York. I'd been in New Hampshire for many years, and I had moved closer to family and worked up there for the past year. And before that, and we had spoken with Catherine before as far as being in Manchester, New Hampshire, at some of the schools in that area. And then recently I moved down a little closer, over in the Saratoga area in New York, and have been fortunate to be at Bennington.
Great.
Molly Stark.
Thanks, Valeria. Then then we have Margaret O'Callahan, who is a very recent joinee of Molly Stark as a special educator. And she comes with great knowledge of Vermont education. I think I shared that at the SVSU meeting. And maybe you could just say a few words, Margaret.
Thank you also for inviting us to tonight. I am a first-year teacher. I graduated in May with my master's in special education and literacy. And I have a background mostly in pre-K education. However, I realized after years of doing that my heart belonged to older students and students, especially those who had a little bit of struggle learning. So I'm very happy.
Thanks, Margaret. And then we have our new first grade teacher, who you may remember as Kristen Ozels, who got married over the summer. So now Kristen Benamati is our first grade teacher. And Kristen comes from Pownell Elementary as a special educator, but her first year at Molly. And welcome to you, Kristen.
Yes, thank you. Well, I live in New York State, so I have a bit of a drive every day, but I'm very excited to be at Molly. I was a special educator at Pownell for the past 2 years, so this is my 3rd year teaching, and I'm very excited to be your first grade teacher.
Thank you. And then we have Kathy Reed, who has joined the classroom with us this year. Kathy has been a title reading teacher for a long time with me back at Catamount. And Kathy was definitely ready, anxious to use some of her skills in the classroom, and we're thrilled to have her join our 3rd grade team. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. This is my now 9th year, I believe, in the district, and have loved teaching at the elementary school level. I taught 8th grade language arts for a year as well. And just between all the grades, fell in love with 3rd grade, kind of a fabulous team to work with, love Molly Stark, and I'm really excited to be in the classroom.
Thanks, Kathy. Welcome. I just want to also mention very quickly, we also had some teachers that couldn't come tonight, but Janet Wells is our new title teacher coming from 2nd grade, and Diane Reed is returning to us as a title teacher. Natalia Klein is a new kindergarten teacher, although she has been at Molly for a while as a classroom teacher. And Sharon Ridley was a paraeducator at Monument last year. She has come to Molly this year as a kindergarten para, so I wanted to publicly welcome them as well. Thank you. Thank you all, Molly staff, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And although they're not here this evening, we have Deanna Donza, who was a 5th grade teacher at Bennington Elementary School, who's joined us at Monument. And Carrie Gardner is going to move back to title, so we're her title position, so we're really pleased to have her there.
Great.
Well, thank you all for selecting Bennington. We really appreciate it, and best of luck. And so many young people too. It's amazing.
It's great.
We would have told us not required they stay for the
No, you don't have to stay.
You don't have to stay.
Should we introduce us, though, perhaps? Should we introduce who we are?
Yes, that would probably be good. Before you leave, maybe we'll take a minute and just introduce the board members so you know which board member.
So I'm Lori Cohen, and I have a child at Monument Elementary School in the 5th grade.
Paul Becker, this is my first time on the board. I have 2 children in the BSC's district, both attending Molly Stark.
And I'm Marie Dekoff. This is going on my 2nd term with the board, and I'm the bus driver for the children.
I'm Jackie Prue. My kids all went through the BSD system, and this is the end of my first term.
George Sleeman, BSD. All of my children have been products of the local school system and the high school system.
Ken Swerd, and my children went to school here at Bennington Elementary. My grandchildren went here, and they're now up at the middle school and high school.
Claude DeLucia, Bennington, and actually all of my children, 4, went to Bennell, and they used to walk. And my grandchildren also went to Bennell. They're in high school and middle school now. And so I'm very happy with the school.
We know how tough your job is, let me tell you.
Challenging and rewarding.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, now we can.
Thank you.
Okay, first item on the official agenda is the citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens here that would like to make comments? Okay, seeing none. The third item on the agenda, presentation of AYP determination monument school.
So, with getting all of these expectations from the Department of Education, and I will pass these out. Catherine asked me to put together a brief summary of the expectations because it's a little bit different this year for School 1, year in School 1 of improvement, and so just to clarify what those expectations are, and I'm hoping this will be helpful to you. We are in year 1, and this is the progression that's required by the Department of Education in year 1. We certainly need to establish an SU level and school level improvement team, and I would have to say thank you to Central Office, Catherine, Donna, Kathy Martin, and Kathy Bach for all helping and supporting me in this information session to begin with, and they've been very supportive in the process of developing and up to the plan that we have to submit, which is, I think, January 1st. We need to respond to the school improvement core indicators, which I'm going to show you and give you a sense of what they are. And we're doing that all, and this is the real difference between other schools that have gone through the school year 1 of improvement. We have to respond through their Green Mountain Star, which is a web-based information system. I'll give you a little snippet of that. And then finally, we have to implement the school improvement plan that we develop and submit, and then we also have to monitor its progress and provide data in regards to moving forward. And I would have to share that both Jim and Donna are already doing many of, or have implemented many of the strategies that we are going to move forward in Monument. So to them, I think it's probably, you'll be my mentors, and certainly a repeat of what we're doing at Monument for this first year. These are the school improvement core indicators. These are the topics, and in your packet, this would be a complete description of the school indicators. There are 10 of them that we must respond to as a school in year 1 of improvement. Our team, which is basically our school, is going to work together to review these indicators, and then we have to respond to them through the Green Mountain Star, this web-based system. And I'm just going to come out of this to give you a little snippet of what Green Mountain Star is. This is our website that we need to log in, and we need to provide all the information, including our plan, to the Department of Education. And it begins by, as you can see, this is about Monument Elementary. You also really want to let me move over because I am on a PowerPoint here, on a projector. But this is about our school, and we have to submit everything through this web-based program. So for example, here's our school indicators. We're going to go through this process, choose all of our indicators, here they are, which is the list that you have on your PowerPoint, provide the information through this system, and then for each one of them, our school improvement coordinators are going to be reviewing this online, giving us feedback, and we're going to have their support throughout this whole process. Here's where we'll submit our plan, our school plan, and then once we submit our school plan, then we have to monitor it, provide data, show them where we've gone, show them what our results are, and so it's a continued process. Out of this. So you can clearly see that the indicators are in 7 areas. and it's 10 total. If you have any questions in regards to those areas, I'd be happy to talk about them a little bit. I think they're pretty self-explanatory as you read them. And it'll be a collection of information that we have an action plan. We work on our school climate. We work on the use of data. We have a curriculum it's up and running in the SVSU, so we're basing all of the information that we have to provide with the DOE on information that we already are utilizing. The school improvement plan is that we have to design and implement that plan, improve academic achievement of students using the Green Mountain Star system, which is that system that I just showed you. It will inform, it will coach us. We'll put all of the information in there to sustain what we're doing. It tracks us, and we report all of these improvement activities to the Department of Education. The plan must include strategies based on scientifically based research. This is kind of a natural process for me just because of my background in instruction in special education. So, I feel comfortable with being the leader and part of the team at Monument, and we've already worked very hard this past week with our SU leader and coach who has been providing us support through the district, Susan Lowell, and with Kathy Marcoux and with Donna Lee. So we've done a lot of work at Monument as a team already, and I'll give you a little of that on the next slide. We have to review our policies and practices. And we're hoping that will lead us to a substantial promise of improving student achievement. And we have to establish specific annual and measurable objectives for all students. These are things that Jim and Donna already do. It's not that it's any different in my school. It's just a little bit of way of reporting and following through with the Department of Education. So I am going to look to them this year. We worked last week as a staff, and we created a RTI model, which is a response to intervention model, to reach all students K through 5. We've come up with an instructional schedule, as you can see, that is going to be tiered for children. On Tier 1, we're looking at all of our children to be progress monitored and get that scientifically based core instruction. We'll monitor them at least triennial, 3 times a year, and that'll be through MAP testing and through Ames Web, which is a monitoring tool, progress monitoring tool, and that will be for all of our children. Our Tier 2, or for those children, 80% of the children will respond to Tier 1. 15% that typically don't respond to Tier 1, we're going to monitor on a more frequent basis, probably every 2 weeks. Through Ames Web, we're going to look at their progress, and they will get additional instruction in additional core instruction in that scientifically based program. If they don't respond at Tier 2, then we look at Tier 3. They may get more additional instruction within the regular ed environment, or if they're still not responding, this then tells us that maybe there is something else that's occurring. Maybe it's an organic issue, and maybe we need to refer to special ed. Okay? And the language that I'm using here, I think, Jim and Donna, you can certainly just jump in. I know you talk always about value added. It's just the terminology that you use, but you all both engage. I know that both of you engage in this process too. So you can see the amount of time at Tier 1, 90 minutes for regular ed, and at Tier 2 they'll get an additional 30. And the same in grades 2 and 3. We've broken it up into 45 minutes and 45 minutes, and then at Tier 2 another additional 30, and 4 and 5. And this is using the resources of all our teachers, all our special teachers. So we're talking about our title teacher, the reading specialist position, which I haven't filled yet.
It's still vacant.
Still vacant, and our special educator. She is trained in instruction for scientifically based programming, and she's a resource. And so we are working as a team In addition to our paraeducators, who do have great, they're highly qualified and they do have great training. We're not asking them to do first right instruction in reading, but they have a supportive role that's really important to play. So when we look at the amount of people in our building and we break it up, we're looking at very small groups to make substantial growth with kids. Supports. Again, I have to say that the SU, my colleagues, Donna Leap, Kathy, have been very supportive in putting together this model monument, talking to me about how we're going to provide the resources that I need. So our personnel includes a literacy leader, which I'm hoping to fill soon, math leader, special education leader, a process manager. It's a very new role, and that's a role that's required by the Department of Education. I do have someone in the building that I work with closely who has asked and volunteered to be the process manager. So we're going to work as a team, that individual and myself. And also about the support of the principal, I really do feel that I've been able to have my questions answered anytime I have a concern. The central office has been there and they've been able to support me in that. Funding-wise, we're looking at purchasing AimsWeb for the entire school, which is required. Program materials, especially for our 4th and 5th grade, they are going to engage in something that is very continuous across those 2 grades. One of that program materials is spellography, the other is Wordly Wise, because it goes along with how we segment words at the younger level in K through 3 through foundations, so it will be a match. It will just be a natural continuum for kids. And then providing the funding for the process manager. This is a position that could be for, the Department of Education says it's 4 to 8 hours, at least a month for a school such as ours, in additional work. So, and I don't know if you want to add anything on that one, Catherine, but we're going to need some funding support for that.
Is this all local funding or is it federal government?
This is local.
And then, yes?
What does the process manager do?
The
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, perfect question. The process manager is going to help input all of that data into Green Mountain Star. They're actually going to produce and develop our agenda items for our meetings. They're going to assimilate the information that we as a team are talking about, the data that we're collecting, and be able to reproduce it and give that information to the Department of Education. So it's going to be quite lengthy. The expectations are pretty high. I feel that we'll be a great team, this individual and myself, so we'll be spending a lot of time doing this.
Ken, if I might, I want to clarify the funding. Materials, we're looking at a combination of local and grant funding. The process manager support would come through the title grant, and then not funded for these schools, but for the high school and the middle school. We have to have a school coach that would be the same for the SU. So the SU itself has to have a school improvement team, and then the high school and the middle school, because they're in restructuring. And those funds come through a state grant out of Title I, but it's state distributed in addition to our local title. So it's a combination.
So I also added behind the core indicators is the expectations from the Department of Education and the timeline of everything that our school needs to do this year. And that's just for 1 year.
I jumped ahead earlier. What are all the numbers in parentheses?
I actually can tell you that. That is what they call, it's a resource. And so when you're on the website, and actually I might be able to show you, when you're on the website, and you go to a core indicator, they call them the wise notes, I think they're called. And so, for example, let me see if I can pick one up. Under high expectations, and you click on, let me see if it'll give it to me. It's each of the indicators, and then sometimes, here we go, wise ways. So here's this is the number of the core indicator next to it, and then each indicator that you go to, they call them wise ways,
and you click on the Wise Ways, and it provides information to you as a team on evidence that's scientifically based research evidence for how you need to assess that core indicator for your school.
Okay.
So you can see it's quite involved for each one. I have 10, and I am so thankful at Monument that we have 10. The high school has 80. Yeah, so I was like, oh, 10. This is good. I was really pleased about that when I realized it. So we have a lot of work to do. I have to commend the Monument staff. They worked very diligently last week. We spent a lot of time on Thursday and Friday, on putting this model together. I would say that if you want to call it a pilot for a BSD school, the only difference is that we're going to progress monitor with AimsWeb, and we're going to do that on a very frequent basis at Monument. And I have to go back to, and I think it was Lori who said this at our last board meeting, the object is to get in and get out. And we have a really focused staff, and they really want to do that. They're looking to get in and get out as quickly as possible. So I think with the support of the BSD, we're going to give it our go.
So can I just, and I know, can the schools remind me, I had, after our last board meeting, had the benefit of some conversations with others about the fact that across the state, there were a number of schools that, actually very large number of schools that, yes, who have found themselves in this first year of corrective action, or this school improvement. And I guess one of the, part of that is that the goal has been moved further down the line. But one of the questions that came back at me was, well, do you know within your district whether you were making progress up to that point? Forget that they moved the target and they moved it out ahead of you. Were you making progress, and would you have if the mark hadn't moved, or even if, forget even what the old mark was, just where you were the prior year? Did we move off that mark? And I guess, I don't know if we ever, I couldn't remember if I asked that question before or if I got an answer to that question before. Because as you talk about, wanting to get in, give it everything you've got, the question is there so far you have to go that no matter how hard you work, you won't get there because the goal is just too far? There's a lot of questions in there.
Right.
I guess my fundamental question is, were we making progress but for the target being changed?
Well, I can certainly only speak for Monument, and I have to say that when we looked at our Kneecap scores, we did make improvement. And so it's really about where the line or where the bar was raised or how far the bar was raised, and it's really that reporting system, I don't know if I want to classify it as fail, but it is that eventually all schools will be in identification. And I think it's really more important about you looking at the progress that individual students make, how much they make per year, and that, just for Monument, I remember reporting in the State of the Union, they make great progress in areas on the Kneecap. And they should really value that as a teaching staff. They do work very hard. They are a very committed staff, and we did see the kids made progress. So,
I think it's important, especially as we talk about the different places that our three schools are in, that it's very important that we clarify that this doesn't mean that we're failing.
No.
And that we really have to keep the message that these are all new tools and these are new strategies that we're employing to continue to advance the ball. But I think it gets lost when we kind of forget to remind, or don't include in our message that we are making progress and that we are moving forward. It's just that the target gets a little further away from us as we're making our progress.
And I'll add one last thing on the progress. This is a school previously to me arriving that engaged in a response to intervention model on a very small K-1 base 3 years ago. And it's really important to remember, we're going to see the progress, but it's going to take us 3 years to really see that effect. Well, their K-1 is now in 4th grade, and our title teacher went and looked at the data to see who was identified within the scores to be applicable for those services at title. There's not one kid in 4th grade. She came out and she said, look at this data. And kudos to all of you as educators and us as a team. Do you remember when we did this? And they did that consistently. They weren't able to do it last year, and they really wanted to get back to it. This is what we know works. And so they're very excited about it, and that's the proof. So that was really very exciting for them.
Ken, I just wanted a reminder too, as you're talking about that bar moving, it's a every 3-year move. So it's been happening over the last few years as well, just for people that are listening.
If I could comment too. One of the interesting pieces of the Kneecap testing is that it was initially established as a standards-based assessment. However, when they developed that, they also turned it into a normed, standardized system. So it's a hybrid that by its nature is inaccurate in its reporting because the standardization bar changes each year in order from the previous year's results. So it no longer becomes a standards-based assessment. It really becomes standardized, which then, I don't want to say causes significant problems with the accuracy, but it does cause questions in that the bar changes, not just for the AYP status, but for its individual determining of student progress. So it's kind of somewhat of an inaccurate way of getting a full, accurate picture of students.
Which is why which is why you've employed maps to look at more of the individual student progress
Correct.
as opposed to kind of the systemic or curricular or whatever, other environmental pieces in the school, because maps is really very personalized to the student.
Well, it is, and I think the other piece with the MAP testing is it's a very quick turnaround. Kneecap testing, you take it in the fall, you often don't get the results till the
Until
spring,
March,
so
right.
it's not a useful tool for educators. And we are finding that MAPS is a fairly good indicator of how kids are going to do in the kneecap, but that's only for another couple of years anyways.
I think we did talk about it the last one. I'm just looking back because I think that's where we came back and identified there was some inconsistencies in other tools that they were using to evaluate progress, because there was some differences in the map testing frequencies and stuff like that.
Right.
They were going to, so we did have that engagement there too.
And whether you're
So
going to,
they could
as
use it.
3 buildings, standardize or you make more uniform your use of those tools.
And this year, the administration will be the same, and it'll be 3 years.
Yep, great.
I mean, 3 years, three times.
3
so.
times.
I think, too, a reminder to everyone that the State of the Supervisory Union report is on our website, so you can really go in there and see the progress that was made at all 3 schools. And I would thank Kathy Marco, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, for that report. She does it every year with the principals.
Great. So,
just brief, did you want to just update people on your action plans? And
Sure, absolutely.
I think each of the other principals would like to do that.
yeah, right there on the, right.
Just briefly.
Because Molly Stark did not take the kneecap last year, we remained at the same status that we had been, and that's year 4 corrective action. So we don't have changes that are mandated for us. We will stay with the reviewing of our action plan, the school improvement goals that we've already submitted to the state. And should we not make AYP for this kneecap that we'll be taking in October, we will be part of that same STARS program the following year with those, probably the 80. But we continue to focus, especially from our action plan, on our compassionate schools, our PBIS, our attendance piece to try to get kids at school,
and the continuous progress monitoring of individual students, and the intervention of instruction, that tiered intervention that Donna was talking about for those students that are not meeting the standard. So it's nothing that you haven't heard before. This is what we're doing.
Just a general question. Will we see, I mean, I don't know, maybe this is a wrong assumption, but we're being held at the same standard. The grades continue to move up. So should we see a change, a jump in our scores and our testing when it comes to those kneecappings? Because the bar didn't move, is what I'm understanding. The expectation.
Moved last
or
year.
did it?
Moved last
Bar
year.
stays the same for 3 years.
So now it will be the same bar for 3 years. So it did move last year, but because we didn't take it.
Didn't take them, you're not measured.
We were not measured.
Right.
So we'll be measured against the test that we took 2 years ago.
Right, so when you go back to take the test again, the measure stays the same for this 3 years. You're basically repeating another year of education. So will you see a change? Will we see will we get closer to the bar, even though the bar moves? Could we even hit the bar? Maybe could we hit the bar now that I don't know if I'm presenting it correctly, and what I'm asking. Well, I'm just, if the expectation changes every year, did we get a buy at the grade level? Did we get a buy at the grade level to get a repeat, and we're not going to be judged on, we basically aren't getting judged for 1 year. So we're getting 2 years of education built in there before we go and take our next test.
Correct.
So will there be some sort of a quantitative number or something that shows us when we go to take that we've improved? You know what I mean? We're closer to that bar. Maybe pass it, I don't know, or meet it.
Yes.
Well, I mean, my comment would be, no, we won't hit the bar. The bar is so high that there is no way of meeting it for us. I won't say that categorically for every school in the state. However, our intent is to show improvement by groups and by student, so that it is, showing progress as the progress monitoring, and that we're moving towards that point. But as far as hitting it,
so like when you compare, all right, let's say if you don't hit it, you've got 10 this year, and if 10 indicators, right, and you're talking about 80 potentially or something. So if you get a,
High school.
80, well, no, you jokingly said we'll probably have it. You just jokingly said, we'll be in the 80 or something like that.
Because of restructuring.
Right, because of restructuring, right.
It depends on where they land.
Right, I'm not saying that's where we're going to be. I'm just using your words. So instead of, if we know we're going to get 80, would we indicators, will we potentially only hit 40? Maybe we won't hit it, but is there going to be something that we'll be able to?
To the indicators. Donna will be able to look at progress to the indicators, but since we're not using the indicators, although actually Donna said she was going to use, even though you're not required to use them, you're going to be looking at those same 10 indicators.
No, I know what you're saying. I remember you saying, could we still
You want to
utilize
see the
Green Mountain
progress to
Star
the indicator,
as a guide?
the 10 indicators.
Yeah.
I think
if the goal is exponentially just always getting higher and higher, well, that goal didn't move this time. But we've continued to put 2 years of effort into our students. So that should move.
So you would think we'd get a greater bump out of it, maybe,
That's what I'm
maybe
wondering.
not.
Is there a
At
way
the
that-
grade
at
level.
the grade level?
At the grade level.
And we'll be able
But
to pull that out.
those fourth graders who didn't take their kneecap, though, are going to be in fifth grade, so they're going to take the fifth grade kneecap, and so they're not going to get measured against they're not going to be looked at as fourth graders now. They lost that opportunity to measure in fourth grade. So
But
it's
the third graders that got the third grade instructional time didn't also get hit there, and they'll have that full year of third grade going into the fourth grade.
You would think there'd be, I mean, to the extent that we didn't, if we were moving in increments, that we should see our increment possibly be a little greater than a 1 year increment, because we have not had the interim to measure, but that's.
The other thing we need to remember is we're going to be changing to a different assessment because the Smarter Balance is coming in with the Common Core. That's going to be an online assessment, as I recall, and is going to start in
New student assessments?
2015.
2000, okay, 2000. They'll replace it.
Replace the kneecap.
So then what do you do in that, well, that's another conversation.
We're still waiting to hear what will happen about the identifications.
Yeah.
We're similar to Donna and Molly Stark in that, we've been identified. We're in year one of corrective action as a second year because of the statewide testing gap, so to speak. With math, we're going to continue to focus using the Bridges math materials, which was new last year, piloted last year for us, but looking more intensely at that as a curricular piece for instruction. We do have a teacher leader that is used. The intervention support, where we're using title services to target students who have difficulties, that tier 2 that Donna Cawley mentioned, and then using the Compass Learning and the MAP testing local assessments in order to monitor how we're going through the year. Some of those are only September, December, January, May type tests, but we do have center marks that we'll be using that are more locally to determine what those intervention groups would look like. If a student shows that they've mastered a certain set of skills, then we'll swap those out with other students who have more significant needs to kind of boost as many students as we can. With literacy, it's, again, the foundations, getting that primary language understanding, reading understanding, how words are made, how sentences fit together. Again, interventionists, partners in reading, the homeschool liaison, finding some collaboration time so that teachers can actually, connect with each others and have some common assessments and common goals for the grade levels, and the PBIS in the second step, which is social skills building, so that some behaviors interfere less with academic growth than have existed in the past. That's kind of where we are.
So two things. You mentioned collaboration time, which was a very big issue. And that certainly the teachers had made collaboration time a very big issue as a goal to work that out and to do some scheduling. Has there been progress made in each building towards carving out some opportunities for greater?
Yeah, we have it in their schedule, so that grade level, they're collaborating 45 minutes once a week, so we can look at data when you need it.
As Catherine kind of just mentioned, with some difficulty, we have been able to come up with some time. More time than we have had, because basically we had zero.
Zero, right.
Now we do have some time that we've been able to incorporate into the daily schedule, so we're hoping and looking forward to that being productive and effective.
Right.
It's still in progress to try to get a and consistent collaboration time, so we're still working on it. In fact, our next step was to meet with Cabinet, because he came with us to the committee last January to look at that again.
And
Trying
then
to reach a certain amount of time amongst the 3 schools, is that what you're saying?
or within the schools.
Within the grade levels.
Within the grade
or
levels.
vertically.
And then the only other question was, Jim, that you had mentioned in the past that you were looking at how you deploy your title teachers and strategically kind of realigning or kind of targeting differently.
Right.
Is that something that you have implemented?
Yes, that connects to the intervention that I've mentioned.
Where
those teachers are
focused.
identifying groups of students who are less proficient within a classroom, spending an allotted amount of time. That may be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, targeted on those specific skills, then checking at the end of that period whether those skills have been mastered, they're proficient, so they can take either other students or work on new skills for those students. So it's an ongoing cyclical type of procedure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next item, treasurer's report. Renee handed out the treasurer's report. Anybody have any questions on it? Is this going to be enough money to carry us through to the town tax?
No. No, but we borrowed. So if you see at the bottom of your beginning, where the beginning balance is, and we have this list of ads, that last line, that tax anticipation note, we have 2.1 million they have invested right now that we have not had to touch yet. We will have state aid coming in next week, but as that comes in, that's the assessment too, so it pretty much goes right back out. I'm hoping we won't have to touch that money until next month. it depends on where the warrants come in. The taxes are due on November 13th this year.
Just later.
And by law, they have to turn monies over to us within 20 days, so that is going to put it into December. But that is how I carry it on my cash flow, like worst case scenario, so that's why, the money that we've borrowed will be sufficient, barring any unforeseen issues to get us through until we do get that money in December. The only other thing that I wanted to add is the CDs came due on our scholarship fund, so I reinvested those. The rates across the board everywhere are just not that great. And so I invested them for an 18-month CD at a 0.4%, which is pretty decent considering a lot of people are getting 0.1 or less on their savings accounts. So that's where that money sits until January of 2014.
Thank you. Does anybody have any individual questions? Okay, can we have a motion to approve the treasury report?
So moved.
Second?
So moved.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have the budget status report is online. Rick's here if you have any questions on that.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions. Just just as we're going through and looking at stuff, but I was just looking at a couple of line items. We talked about recently the maintenance positions and duties and all that stuff. Just curious on the crossing guard. Are those, I don't know how many crossing guards we currently employ, but is that for individualized, or is that part of duties for custodial staff? That, because you mentioned, Jerry, that custodial staff do crossing guard duties.
They do. The crossing guards that we have employed are out. We have two. We have one at Willie's Crossing and one at and over to Molly Stark and Johnny Bashir, the custodian covers there. We don't have anybody extra for that. But if one of those two are out, my staff covers for those.
Okay, so that's what this line item is for those two other locations specifically. And I think some of it is in the warrants, but I was just saying that we did some repairs, and I didn't think the warrants for that, but I was looking at Molly Stark and the kitchen repairs, and these might have been anticipated repairs that you did, or with the equipment and stuff, but they went into the negatives there. I know it's early in the year, but I'm just curious what we had purchased or put in there.
Off the top of my head, I don't recall what we purchased, but
Same thing at mine.
it's a new equipment. New equipment line.
I'm guessing it just says kitchen equipment, monument, and Molly. Both of them looks like something.
We have a program through the SVSU food service program where we're replacing equipment in the buildings. And it's kind of treated like a grant, although it's kind of an internal grant thing. The local district picks up 50%, the food service program picks up 50%. So you're seeing 100% of the cost because you own that piece of equipment. The SVSU will reimburse you 50% of that cost.
Okay, so that goes up and down.
Which will likely balance that out. It should anyway, if we budgeted accurately.
And then I didn't know if there was a general.
There was another item there too that, can you give us any information on that plug sewer problem, and where is it, what school?
That's in the warrants.
What happened?
That was going to be under the warrants.
$2,200 item on a plug sewer?
The
Plug drain,
that was Molly Stark, I think, was it? We had just a torrential rain downpour, and I just think what happened is a couple of the lines that are on our roof drains go into the drain into the sewers in that section of the building, and just with all that rain that we had, it just happened to push up into that floor drain. So it was clean up to disinfect and make sure there wasn't any problems, and that was back in August, I think.
I don't know. I mean, that is under the warrants, but I mean, if we're on that, that's what
you're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about the back during the school year problems that we've had. We continue to do all the repairs to all the lines we put on that, flushers and everything back that time to cure that problem that we kept having occurring in the band we use at the area. So we think that we have it. We haven't had a problem since we changed, and I finished this summer changing out the other 18 or 20 automatic flushers down that we didn't finish from last year. You know, we're just doing the best we can to make sure the problem doesn't reoccur.
Right. To that degree, I mean, because buildings is always coming up. I mean, it'll come up again when we continue to talk about it. Has there been an assessment done of the infrastructure itself? I mean, I imagine it's got cast pipe in there and different things. I mean, have we done
the sewer lines, well, when we started having problems, we started checking, and every time we checked, we found something, we corrected it, so we thought we had it cured. We found a separation in the pipe. At one point, we found a pipe tipped back in another location that we repaired that. And then, like I said, the other thing was we found that a lot of our toilets weren't being flushed, you know, for several usage. So that's when we went to the automatic flushing. And combination of doing everything, I think now we may have it taken care of. But it's just there's been a lot of add-ons to Molly Stark School, but not any increases in the size of the sewers. So you have, you know, a big section dumping into a smaller pipe from a bigger pipe, and being the pipe goes under the building, it didn't, you know, they didn't dig up and increase the size of the pipe, and that's another issue. But, you know,
so that type of stuff, I'd be, you know, not for here, but if, you know, that's to me is valuable information in regards to a facility and its ability to continue to maintain. I mean, if the infrastructure is not there, I mean, it's good data to know if we're going to pursue buildings and things like that, to know that, you know, what we have it just barely works, and it's because of this, like you're saying, if it's big pipe into little pipe, and then, or little, you know what I mean, and if you know that there's cracks and the integrity is not 100%, we fix the things immediately fine, but those are definitely things that we should know, and that way there we can put it into the assessment of it as well. That was all I had.
Yes.
I just had one thing. I had trouble getting on the budget. It's such a small font, and when I tried to enlarge it, the format wouldn't even zoom. I couldn't zoom in and zoom out. I just asked you if you could check that out.
I just did it. It opens up at 43, and I got it up to 135, so I don't know.
Well, I don't know what when I go to whatever's given to me on my whatever's format it actually sent out at. If you check that out.
I went to the website. I don't know.
Yeah, that's. I don't think we were getting that.
So. I went to the website. You guys get something sent to you directly?
Yeah, it's an attachment to the.
And the font is so small you can hardly read it.
So it might be. We'll have to check and see if she's sending in a PDF or something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess it probably is a PDF.
Yeah, we'll
It
check
is a PDF.
Yeah, let's. You think it is?
I know it is.
Yeah, it's a PDF. She's saving it in. So.
Anything else on the budget? Okay, Rick wants to give us a little explanation about unemployment insurance rate.
I do. Yeah, I think you've all noticed over the last couple of years that we've had some pretty significant unemployment costs. You know, we've downsized, so some of it's not unusual or unexpected, but it was significantly different than what the other districts were seeing. And in researching it, I found out that sometime before me, and thus I know it was all before you guys, that in the previous years, the board made a decision not to go into the unemployment insurance program with the Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust. Every other district in the SU is in that program. My guess is it was a period of time when we were probably increasing employment, and the story I was told was the board at the time said, we'll pay as we go, and they probably figured we would never pay because we're growing staff, so there won't be much unemployment. And now we're seeing some significant costs. We're doing an analysis on it. Very, very dirty. It's tough to compare, actually it's impossible to compare apples to apples, because the insurance rate that the school board trust will give us is based on our prior 3 years activity. So we've given them all that information. They're working up some numbers that if we want to, we can start in January. There's, similar to health insurance, there's only 2 open enrollment periods. One's in January, one's in July or June. And but when I looked at what BSD paid over the last 2 years compared to what Mount Anthony and SVSU, who I would term from a staffing standpoint, from growth or shrinkage, would have been similar districts. You know, you paid on average about $10,000 more than those 2 districts did by, you know, as we term it, pay as you go. So, and what that means is there's no insurance covering you. Somebody files for insurance, the state sends you the bill, you write the check. And with the insurance trust program, it's an insurance program, and they work it off of you know, your history and what your experience factor is and what your risk factor is, and they'll give us an insurance rate for the first $8,000. So probably in the very near future, I'm going to be coming back to you. I just wanted to give you that information. If you guys have an opinion of one way or the other I should be looking, or something else you want me to be looking at, let me know. But you know, I think we need to seriously consider, as of January, looking at the school board trust program.
Put that down for January.
Well,
January,
He'll report
You're
before
gonna do-
that, so we can subscribe to January.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be back at some point in the near future, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any individual questions? Yes.
Next item. We have a revised agenda, and we have a 4A, which is, and I believe does everybody have it? We have a standing agenda item on the status of the Preschool Act 62 program, and this item that we've added today is that status report. It's 4A. I'll pass out what our authorization request is, but as you know, we need to staff the 4-year-old program with certified teachers, and Karen has drawn up her request for the SU board, because these would be SU employees because they're coming through the grant, but they'll be based in BSD. So we're just getting your authorization so that we can continue the posting and hiring process so that we can start these, because the SU Executive Committee meets the 18th, and we'd like to move this along. So if we have the authorization from you, we can continue. Karen?
I think the document is pretty self-explanatory. You know, the law dictates the licensed teacher component, and some of the partners that we're partnering with will need that support. We have that in our budget. We have several, as you know, we have several sources of money that are funding this project. The money is in the budget to pay for these positions, and we expect that right now we will need 2 people. We're still partners are still signing up, so we want to, you know, we may not need 3, but we'll use what we need, and we expect that they'll be part-timers.
So we just need a motion to authorize the
So
staffing.
Second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Any questions?
So, no, not on the motion, no. Not on the motion.
All in favor? Thank you.
So you will be coming back and telling us at some point in the next couple of months what you actually hit in terms of your enrollment, right?
I will. I would love to. It's
Okay.
going really well.
Is Arlington coming on board?
Excuse me?
Arlington?
We don't, you know, that's not part of our supervisory union, so
Okay.
I'm not really involved with what
Well, I had a parent
Arlington.
ask me.
Arlington does have public pre-K, so they should be contacting
For
their.
3-year-olds and 4-year-olds?
I think for 4-year-olds, but I would have them contact the elementary school.
I told them to call you.
It is going very well. You know, don't hold me to it, but I think we're going to break the 100 mark.
Melissa?
It's been a lot of work. I haven't gotten a coordinator hired yet, so it's been a very busy summer. But the outpouring of partners has been great. We have license centers, we have homes, and it's all, I need to now sit down and do all of the verification. You know, when I was talking to partners in the spring, they gave me anticipated enrollment, but now people are actually enrolling. So I'm actually getting the names and where they're located and all of that. And then I'll be sitting down with Rick and after I get that picture, and we'll be doing the funding structure, either for either the licensed teacher or the tuition reimbursement for the families. But it's pretty exciting, and I was actually meeting with the funding liaison on Wednesday, and Rick happened to be there for a few minutes, and I think they're a little surprised how fast we moved. I got that impression. I
haven't moved fast in 30 years.
Karen, he did say that. He said that he was very impressed with how.
And I think why we are able to move fast, I mean, we really should be doing this in January, and remember, we really didn't get all of the verification until June, so it's been really fast-tracked, intense. But I think it's because we have a structure for our early childhood department that already has relationships with community-based providers. I can't say that 100% of the people in the community are happy. I think there's still some people that are worried, concerned, but we've done everything we can to answer questions, engage partners. So probably October would be a good time to come back and do a full report, because that would give me really time to get everybody enrolled. We have to have everybody enrolled and ready by that October 1 report anyway, so that'd be a good time to really come back in October.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, number 5A, review of task list from last meeting.
We had the new employees come today to be introduced to the board, and you had changed your board meeting to the 6th. Also, however, we continue to work on the programming and the facilities and try to consider all the different short-term and long-term possibilities for programmatic organization and the facilities use. So you'll hear a little bit about that as we get to the status of kindergarten enrollments, but we have the generator discussion first.
Okay, B, Bennington Elementary School potential generator.
Just, maybe make sure, before you, is it the task, because we were gonna, on that task list, on that first section, is this the task list for all of our previous meetings? Is this where the?
Just the last meeting.
Just the last meeting.
Just the last.
Is there
I'm
something
gonna
we?
have to go through all the board meetings.
Right. Was there something we missed, Paul, that you had expected?
Well, Paul had a request that he would like to see somewhere on the agenda a list of the previous meeting's task list. So if we had 6 after the last meeting, those 6 would show up here, so we would have a reference point to discuss and look at.
Or over the course of 3 meetings, whatever they are. So, like, you alluded to one, which was the administration was talking about, or maybe you said you agreed to it, the map testing. That came at our last meeting to discuss on the frequency amongst the administration. I mean, I assume that's a tap.
And we just reported in the last presentation that they will be all taking the fall, the winter, and the spring.
Right, so I mean, I got that off of there. So I, like, that's one that would have been, let's say that was two months ago. Or I just, you know, the other one, let's see here, the ongoing, you get the 5th grade. We had one meeting where we talked about the Tier 3 training and the progress towards that to try to help the schools.
For the PBIS best training, that's
Yep.
correct, we did.
We had, and I don't know if we'll get into it down here with the technology or not, but there was going to be the technology, the director of technology was going to be here for the September meetings for presentation, connectivity and
Missed
all.
that one, I'm sorry.
Paul, also, picking up on Paul's point.
Sure.
It's my feeling that in building the agenda, the chairman and the superintendent, I think that the first item on the agenda of the following meeting should be picking up on these items that we're putting down. And because I'm sure there's items that we're missing that Paul has not even brought up. So what I'm saying is that whatever is on there, we should start our next meeting with those items so that we can refer to them.
Would you like me to go back to
No.
Richard's minutes for the last 6 months, write down
No,
all the tasks?
no, I just think
No, we
from
don't
this
have to,
point
because we
on.
have them. I have the task list, and yes, you're right. When I did this agenda with Ken, we should have grabbed the box and just looked at those last few.
Catherine, I'm saying there are items that I won't bring up at this meeting that also applies to the supervisory union meeting. There are items that we keep putting them off and we don't talk about them.
Well, then what you need to do is make sure the chair is aware of them.
Well,
And I will
here's the
pull
chair.
all of I will say right now, I will pull all of the task lists, because we keep them. I have them for over a year. They're in the box, they're there. I will pull them all out and take a look at them.
Yeah.
And if you'd like them, I have worked with boards where they actually do list them. They're not usually put at the front, George, because sometimes they fit under a presentation that's being given or
Well, maybe
another
we could-
item.
maybe we
But I
could,
could put them at the back. We
Or
could
we
list
could
them at the
even
bottom.
maybe make a note after where it was from, even if it's further
Sure.
down the
Sure,
agenda,
I can do
so that
that.
we can cover so that these items are taken care of.
At one point, we actually had them as part of the agenda. We had a separate handout, which
Yes.
was the task list from the prior month. And we
Yes.
all had, we had copies of them.
So they were
Yes.
photocopied and given
That was
out?
before me.
Yeah, that's
Was
what
it?
Yes.
They had been,
Photocopied and
yep, they were
handed out.
photocopied and handed out. And then everybody saw them,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't,
Whether it's a photocopy or...
however it is, as
Right.
long as the list, if it goes on the list, it never comes off the list until it's checked off. And I wouldn't have, I don't know if anybody else would have picked up on there I picked up on the presentation
Oh, for the map testing.
for the map
right.
testing, but
Right.
I'm not always the sharpest knife in the drawer, trust me. So,
Pretty good, Paul.
I mean, well, just so that if somebody does
Yeah,
come
no, I
up, I mean,
understand.
we can say, all right, great,
And I
job well
guess
done, we hit it.
I feel sad that there would be items that we've missed, and I'll make sure, George, to be more diligent.
Yeah.
As that's feedback for me directly, because I
Sure.
am the one that sits with the board chair. So I will make sure that I remain more accountable for that, and I will go back through those task lists. And what's your preference, to have them photocopied, or would you prefer?
Whatever you people
And I'll
feel
tell
is
you,
best.
now that Jackie as your clerk is taking them, but sometimes when I was taking them, I have personal notes for myself on what I want to talk with the principal, so we'll make sure that those are blacked out. So if you see some things that are crossed out, it's probably because I made a note for myself to just follow up something. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a couple of things though. When are we gonna start meeting for budget?
October usually.
November.
October, November.
Probably middle of November,
Yeah.
December.
That late? You think it's that easy?
Well, there's a transition piece, I think, there, and we said that we would come back, and this actually I had under other items for myself, but we had said originally, as we were starting into the summer months, that you were going to meet twice a month in order to work on the long-term and short-term solutions
Right.
for programmatic organization and facilities. And so what I was going to ask, your next meeting would be the 17th of September, and I was going to ask to move it to the 24th so that we could finish what we're looking at and connect with the facilities committee and meet together and try to come up with that recommendation for that final meeting. That only really leaves us 2 weeks, and we really do need that extra week. But I think that leads into the October discussions, which are going to set us up for the budget that Rick's talking about in November. So I think, Jackie, if that's where you were thinking, it is going to be a little bit of a longer process, because we're going to try to come up with some short and long-term solutions.
Jackie, can you make that?
No.
You can't make the 24th.
She blocked out her time.
That's right, the 17th. Well, then we'll try for the 17th. We'll keep it.
I mean,
Because I
I'm
think
one
those
member, but
discussions are
to be
important.
part of it.
Yeah, exactly. They're very important. We'll keep to it.
I mean, if I know ahead of time,
No, I
beginning of the
understand.
month.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Wherever you can
That's
gather
fine.
together, that'll be.
Yeah, No, it won't be. We need to
The reason why I asked that is because there are some things that we had on task list about budgets.
Budget.
That we're gonna talk about this year, we're supposed to talk about this year in budgeting, and part of it was the technology that I think Frank was gonna bring to us, but I had asked the question about the old computers and all that. I think in June or May, I don't know which one it was.
May.
And we never got a report on how many old computers we have, what we really do have for technology, needs for the districts.
Yeah, because those notebooks only have a certain life to them, they're not gonna last forever.
Yeah, but we still have some that have the old monitor and,
Yeah, we do. We have.
the old CPUs and.
Did we lease those notepads that we have for the kids,
Yeah.
4th, 5th grade, or we buy them?
No, we purchased those, but the board put into the budget this year, and so I hope we're gonna keep it for the next 2 years to lease new equipment for the 5th grade, so we'll push those other stuff down because they're still fairly decent. It's a $50,000 lease payment, I think $50,000 or $60,000 lease payment that's in your budget for this year that we'll have to carry for the next 2 years. And the tech department is currently putting together that, they worked with you guys, right? Putting together
We've begun conversations.
the equipment to purchase for the 3 buildings. But that, by any stretch of imagination, doesn't end it. I mean, it's an ongoing conversation. Jackie's right, there's just,
And Frank may come up with some new ideas, like iPads or those Chromebooks.
the more equipment we put in the buildings, it's more demand on a lot of issues.
Now, Rick. Generator.
I apologize I missed your last meeting. I don't know if I could have provided any more insight than what I hear was already presented. I have reached out to the town as well as our federal legislators. The town very emphatically said they don't have money. In fact, they're actually looking for money to help them finish cleanup on Irene. Federal legislators are working. There's been some emails going around the last few days. I haven't heard anything overly promising, but they've thrown a lot of leads in my way. But it's more from competitive grants that we would have to go out and try to achieve. And I apologize if this is redundant from the last meeting, but I just wanted to make sure that you all understood that this is a domino effect that's taken place here. The town applied for emergency management grant of some sort of FEMA, I forget exactly which department it came under, and was awarded enough money to put a generator at the middle school large enough to run that entire building, so that it, in the case of an emergency, that could be used as an evacuation center. And during that analysis, they checked with us, and the one that the middle school's been using for the last 4 years, and since I know the owner, I know it's been maintained pretty well. They're trying to leverage that and put that unit at this facility so that we could have another evacuation site in the event of a mass evacuation need for whatever reason. The problem with that is we need to install it, and installing it's not cheap. It's somewhere between $35,000, $55,000 in that ballpark. It's just a very dirty estimate. We haven't spent a whole lot of time on it until we get some idea that the board wants to go in that direction. You do have money in your reserve fund. You have about 167 or so. I forget exactly the number, but somewhere in that ballpark in your reserve fund. When we talked about this, maybe a year and a half ago, I forget when this conversation first started. That was the original plan. So that's where I'm at. You know, it's, I think it would be beneficial for the school. I think it'd be beneficial for the community. You know, that one instance when there's an issue and the kids have to stay here and power's out and we don't, you know, a snowstorm, we can't get kids home or whatever, once in a lifetime issue. I think we'd be happy to know that we had it. We could keep the kids, we could feed the kids, we could do whatever we had to do with them. But, you know, board prerogative, I don't know where you want to go from here.
I know we had that letter from the police chief and everything stating to what you said there about being a second shelter. Has anybody been able to truly identify if that is the town's plan? I put a call in to try to see if that was the town's plan to designate us as a second evacuation shelter. The last conversation I had with the police chief over the course of time through other avenues, I got the impression that he was working on possibly the firehouse as the secondary evacuation point on this side of the river. That was just in general conversation. So if it's a town initiative, and I mean, and we are going to be part of the town's emergency management plan, then by all means, I would not want to shun the town. I mean, absolutely. I can remember Irene like it was yesterday. I mean, and I don't think anybody want to do that, but at the same time, I think that that discussion needs to happen with the town to know that we are going to be part of their documentation, and with that, what else comes with it, other than is it just to install, because hey, it's a great thing, but I want to make sure we're going into under the right pretense.
I can't speak for the town other than, you know, the letter and a couple of conversations I've had with them. You know, my interpretation is that they're trying to see if they can get this. I mean, I don't think they're planning for this, because unless they can have the facility do what it needs to do, why would they waste their time trying to plan this and write this into a plan? So my guess is if we said, yeah, we'll install it and we'll have it up and running, they would be knocking on our door very shortly to say, okay, now can we enter into this cooperation agreement similar to what we entered into at the middle school, that we can use this in the term of a disaster. And it could be a whole host of things. It could be a, you know, an epidemic where we got to set it up as a medical, you know, triage area where we're treating, you know, whatever. Or it could be, you know, October snowstorm, power goes out, we need to house people. You know, flood's going to be iffy because we're in a flood zone.
Right, yeah,
This
evacuated.
This obviously didn't flood during Irene, but it could have. But there's a lot of emergency issues that don't involve water. So it's, you know, I don't think, I guess to more blatantly answer your question, no, I don't think we're part of the plan, because I think this was kind of a sub afterthought of the mine. I think say, well, hey, you know, if we can get this to work, we got another facility that we could put into play. But I guess I would suspect that if you agreed to do this, that there would probably be more serious discussions about it.
Is it going to affect the taxpayers? By raising taxes, by the expense?
It's the PSD's money.
Well, that's an open-ended question. In my opinion, every dollar you spend affects the taxpayers. I mean, you know, although technically you have it in a reserve fund, you utilize taxes to generate that reserve fund. And if you use it on this, that's, just pick a number, say it's $50,000. It's $50,000 you're not going to have to use on something else. And that reserve fund is for facilities. You can't buy books with it. You can't buy computers with it. It's to maintain, repair, enhance facilities. So, yeah, I would say every dollar you spend, it affects the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Other than, obviously I understand the construction windows and stuff like that and wanting to get in here. I mean, I know all the scope of things that got to happen between now and middle of November. Is there anything other than that as to why it has to happen right now? I mean, is there a reason why this can't be further talked about with the town? I mean, can we buy it for the dollar and invest in holding it or keeping it wherever it is, or talking to the generator people to see if there's harm to it, if it doesn't, and then have more of a conversation? Because if we are, I mean, I don't know, you probably know more than I do, but with becoming an emergency shelter, what other expenses will come? What other things do we have to make sure that we have here on site in order to be that place, and how is that balanced?
Yeah, my experience with the middle school and what happened in Irene, you know, it cost us some staff time, not a lot. I mean, the Red Cross was supposed to reimburse us for all that. I'll be honest, they didn't. You know, we didn't chase them for it because we wanted to be good community members, and it wasn't a lot of money. It didn't break Mount Anthony's bank, and it didn't break the taxpayers' bank, and in our opinion, it was the right thing to do. But no, I mean, they just want the ability to have a facility that's got lights and is running refrigeration and kitchen equipment, so that if they've got to house and feed people, they've got the capacity to do it. The Red Cross did a great job. They brought in trailers and
They did. And
trucks and just brought in cots, and the hospital brought in cots and blankets, and it was remarkably efficient and organized. It was amazing to have the various components come together and work that efficiently. It was amazing. So, you know, I don't have a heartburn one way or the other over this thing. I mean, it was, you know, it was a request, and you know, I think it makes sense. I think it's, you know, if I was to build this building today, I think if you guys were to build this building today, if you were to design a new building to build, there'd be a generator in that building. I mean, you just the electronic components you have in here, from servers and equipment that, you know, you'd want running at various times, even if it's a 2-hour blackout. You know, that's what you would, I would strongly recommend you do. I think it's become a critical component in buildings these days. I mean, you just you need to keep going, and you need that power.
So I made the comment at the last meeting that when we visited the 3 campuses and we reviewed with the principals their not wish lists, because that actually suggests it's trivial stuff, but when we visited the schools and we talked about kind of the facilities needs, and the committee's been meeting, you know, a generator and $167,000, to the extent that the money is there and it's reserved for improvements to the buildings. My comment was that a generator seemed to be a luxury, that if Bennington Elementary School was given $50,000 to replace windows right now, or to repair other things that needed to be repaired that are on the list to be done, that it seemed that this, it needed to be considered in the larger list of facility improvements that needed to be done, and not isolated as a single item. Because I think if I had it's not unlike budgeting, you know, exercises that we've done in the past, where we've had the list of, here are the top 10, and we've only got $55,000, Jim. Where's your top 10 going to be? Is the generator going to be on the top of the list, or is it going to be in the middle, or is it going to be on the bottom? So I'm really uncomfortable, you know, making a capital recommendation when I know we spent, all of us, the summer visiting 3 campuses, and generators weren't on the list. There were lots of other things that were on the list. So I'm hesitant. I appreciate that if we could put generators here or at all 3 of our buildings, there'd be great benefit from it. But it seems to be in isolation and not part of our larger conversation about what are we doing with our facilities, which we've said we were going to spend a lot of energy and time kind of deciding, you know, where we're going to go out. And if generators are something that all 3 of our buildings should have, then let's go tell the taxpayers that we need 3 generators and have them prioritize that, or have them say they want a music classroom. or an art classroom at Monument, or they want, special rooms, additional space in our other schools so that we can do the special kinds of programs that we need to do, the interventions that we need to do. I want this to be part of a broader facilities conversation. And I know it's only 35 or 50,000 and it's in our budget, but I think it has to be part of in my opinion, a bigger conversation, because we've been kicking that can down the street a long time about what our facilities need. And it just seems to me that we need to come up with a more comprehensive plan about our facilities.
Well, that was where I was kind of curious, is on the timeline of, can we accept the generator? Can we do something along that lines and allow us to really vet out, are we gonna put that, if we had the generator and it's easier to absorb the installation on a brand new school, to put that in, than it is to create an isolated $50,000 right here and bring it into that broader conversation and still use it and, put a deadline out there. We have to make a decision in the next however many months, whatever you want to put on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple players in this thing. I mean, Mount Anthony has to weigh in, could we take a generator and sit on it for a year? Yeah, I mean, your risk is having an engine sit there doing nothing, or trying to figure out how you go run it for, right now, and they're normally hooked up, they run for like 2 hours at 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning.
Right.
Just to run it cycle, make sure everything's working, and, and you could set up that plan to have someone go manually do that, but my guess is that process wouldn't last very long. After a couple of weeks, that's going to probably get old, someone's going to forget to do it, and then it's going to be another week, and, a year from now, that engine isn't going to be what it is today. I understand what you're saying, Lori. I don't disagree with what you're saying. Jerry, help me here, but you're probably talking, a real value of that generator of somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 as it sits. So you're talking a, $40,000, $50,000 investment for, $100,000, $110,000 investment. I mean, for value. I would respectfully suggest or imply that, if BSD isn't interested, I would talk to some of our other facilities in the SU to see if I could work out a deal with them, because I'm not sure it's wise to let it sit for a year. And maybe none of the other districts would be interested in the investment, and maybe Mount Anthony would then just sell it, I don't know. But, I think it's a discussion that needs to happen, whether you want it or not. I don't think we can sit around and say, I want to think about it for 6-8 months.
Lori, I agree completely with where Lori's coming from, and I'd be hard-pressed to vote that in at this particular time. There's just too many other things we've got on the table, and that's where I'm coming from. I agree completely with what Lori's saying.
So am I. What about Shasberry School? It's a higher elevation.
I think that's what he's saying. You would talk to
Somebody
I
else.
will be speaking with other districts in the district.
I think we're being short-sighted, but, I think you're being short-sighted, but
In the audience, maybe comment?
I'm the only one that believes we should have it.
As a practical matter, if we were seriously thinking about getting a generator, I mean, don't they have mobile units? I mean, if you're talking emergency use. So if this were an original conversation and we're saying, what are we going to do in an emergency for our schools, then it wouldn't be unreasonable to say, well, since you don't know which one of the 3 schools, if you went out and got one mobile unit, but now we're talking about getting a permanent unit only at one school. What do you do with the other 2?
Well, the difficulty, and Jerry can help me, or you can help me, Paul can help me, but the expense is to construct the wiring and all the switches to make this thing work. And if you wanted a mobile unit, if you wanted to own a mobile unit, then you're gonna have to put all this investment into every building to figure out where this, you know, to make all the
And that's a
switches work, and to
facilities
make all the,
conversation.
you know,
Exactly.
and that's significantly more money.
Exactly. That's this way we'd be talking about the whole enchilada instead of piecemeal after the fact.
You know, it's, I mean, you know, I think it's a good idea, but my job is to bring things to the board and let you folks make the decision. I look at this as a community, a school district. A school is a community, and if you go to the town for the money, it's the same dollar. This is Bennington, whether it comes from Bennington's dollar or from the town, or Bennington's dollar from the school district, same dollar. I also look at if there was an emergency in this town and we had the facility to go to, and it would be a great thing, and we'd be begging for it if we didn't have it. Not having to be able to go up to the high school or junior high if that building wasn't there, you know, and it could have been a lot worse around here than what it was. And if it was worse, we would want to have a building that we could put our students or keep our students in, and, you know, their parents or whatever. You know, that's my idea to push for it. But if, you know, if it's something that you don't want to do, you know, that's your prerogative. The other piece is as far as I was saying about sending around school to school, this is one of the schools that's definitely, from all my talking with the boards over the years, is permanently. This building's going to be here. We're going to be using it for years after I'm not here. So this would be the school to put it in. You know, not Molly Stark, because, you know, there's long-range plans talking about not using that building and doing something, whatever it may be eventually. So, you know, this is the structure. This is an opportunity. Somebody once told me that sometimes opportunity knocks, you got to know when to open the door. So, you know, you either open it or you close it. That's your decision. Thank you.
Can I comment? I would not have put a generator on the list of things to do simply because I feel my focus is primarily more an academic approach and a kind of like just a general maintenance, like the windows and the heating plant type of thing. But I can say that if we had an emergency, I would be really, really pleased to be able to say that we've got lights, that we've got heat, and that we don't have to be worrying about how we get the kids home because they're safe here. Now, that could be, as Rick mentioned, you know, something that happens in an October storm or anytime during the winter or any number of reasons. But it to some degree fits into the community mindfulness arena as opposed to the educational. But if an event should occur, it would be in the best interest of the kids to be able to know, well, okay, at least we've got 300 kids in Bennington who are secure, and you know, we don't have to worry about transporting them, getting them out of here. They're safe. They've got food. They've got heat. They've got lights. They're good.
And my point is not against the generator.
No, I
My
understand.
point is that it's being talked about in isolation and not as part of a larger facility conversation.
Right.
And maybe it's because of the timing, but I know we established a facilities committee, how many months ago now? And we were gonna, I mean, well, ironically, the only thing that came to us from the tours that we did and the conversations was the generator, which wasn't on anybody's list. So,
There's one other thing, emergency shower.
a shower.
Emergency shower for Bennington.
Okay.
BSD.
But the point is that, you know, there were those items that Jerry identified in the buildings, that the principals identified in the buildings, that the facilities committee was gonna come back. We were gonna talk about, you know, how, if we were gonna address these things, what the priorities were gonna be, how would we fund that? Would we go out with a bond? What would we do? And it just seems to me that instead of addressing what is a issue that, since I've been on the board for 5 years, everyone said we're gonna do something about Molly Stark, we're gonna address these things, it just seems to me that we should have the big plan, and the generator can be part of the big plan. But right now, the only thing that's here is the generator.
As far as talking about building issues, we haven't talked about building issues because we're too busy talking about how we're going to deliver our education. And that's where the building committee's been sitting for the last 6 months. With the 2 meetings a month, All we have been talking about is how we're gonna deliver our education. We have not once sat down and looked at what they needed and talked about building issues.
And that's why I suggested by
Right,
the
it all
next
ties
meeting that
together.
we'd have a joint meeting in preparation for that, to pull that facilities into the discussion.
But we're not gonna be
But that
ready to make a
facilities-
decision in October.
That facilities discussion, though, would be related to the programmatic pieces and would take into some consideration the capacity and the infrastructure of the buildings.
Mike, you want to make one comment?
What can I make too? I agree with Jerry Crew. I'll fall out of the chair. In lieu of, I just saw the governor down here about a week ago, I was talking to him and what he's done going around the state. We were very lucky, extremely lucky in Bennington, probably one of the best spots to be right now with all the damage from Irene. And Irene really can happen at any time, through a melt, through snow, through anything else. And I think you do need to have a generator in this building. But I think, going back to what Jackie just said, and Lori, you do have to have the bigger conversation, and I think you need to, and I was here a couple months ago, you need to bring the select board into one of your meetings to have these conversations and get them on the record to say yay or nay on some of these things you're going to need. Because like I think Jerry just said, you're drawing from the same tax pocket. And the town of Bennington, and writing all the columns they do and talking to all the people, they got some major issues that they're going to have to face themselves because they've kicked it down the road on infrastructure, on not getting paid back for Irene. So I do believe that you do need a generator for this, because if there's an emergency, you're all going to be really, really red in the face if this is going to be. But ask the select board what they can do, what grants they can get, how much they'll put into it, get you set in here and see if there's any kind of extra money that you can get. If he's going to make this his spot. If he isn't going to make it his spot, find out why. But I think you need the further discussion with the town of Bennington. And that should be done right away. Lori's right. You can't keep kicking this stuff down the road for, the maintenance and everything else in the buildings. But I think you should do a generator. 50,000 sounds like a lot of money when you isolate it, but when you look at the budgets of between the town and the schools, districts, it is a drop in the bucket. So,
I'll donate some money.
well, if I had it, I'd give it to you.
Thank you.
Ken, I think timing is part of why this is so difficult, is because we're right in the middle of looking at programmatic organization, delivery of instruction, and facilities capacity, and the infrastructure of those facilities, the aging of Molly Stark. But in most communities, because this doesn't come in this kind of timing zone or timing for the discussion, most communities look at this as a community discussion separately from an educational, as Jim was saying. It's more community decision, not related necessarily to the education, because you're really looking at becoming a shelter for the community, and as Paul said, a secondary shelter. And usually those decisions and conversations are in my experience with the Red Cross, who provide, regional
Well, I actually haven't
certification
seen
for it.
anything to suggest that we've been asked officially by anybody to designate this school as a shelter. All I heard was that there was a generator that was up at the middle school that wasn't going to be used anymore,
Maybe
and that
that's
for
the
$1 we could bring it here and we'd spend $50,000 to put it in. So if there's an official request out there from somebody to designate this school as another shelter, I certainly, as a citizen of Bennington, do not want to stand in the way of that kind of public safety activity. But that's not what I've been told. I mean, I don't see a request from the select board or anybody else saying, please make Bennington Elementary. I mean, so I don't want turn this into we're anti-town or we're anti-safety of the community. It's, we have $167,000 in a contingency fund. We have millions of dollars of needs for our school. If we're going to spend $50,000 on a generator, I just want a broader conversation about how are we going to fund all the other needs? How are we going to put windows in the building? Windows. We're not talking about luxuries. We're talking about windows. So it should be a broader community conversation, but it's not me rejecting this becoming a safe, but I haven't seen anything. There's no official letter that says, please, Bennington School District, we respectfully request that you consider designating your Bennington Elementary School, because of its location, as being a second safety center, or, I just don't see it.
I thought Mr. Doucette had an article in the paper about the school and that generator.
I didn't see
This
that.
school?
Actually, Jim says there have been
We
agreements.
we have had agreements with the Red Cross. I haven't seen a form in the last couple of years, but prior to that, we have had cooperative agreements with American Red Cross to use the building as a shelter in emergency circumstances. It's been limited because of the power question and showers question type thing, but it has been an agreement to use if necessary with those restrictions applying, and I don't know how that actually works, but we have said, we'll help.
Whether it's feeding, whether it's using it to feed people.
Was there a letter, Rick? I thought there was.
I thought there was something from the police chief.
Just a letter I gave.
Right, it was a letter from Paul Doucette suggesting that we consider putting that generator down here. Right, basically, is what it said.
And there is,
I mean, I have my truck, I don't get it.
there
But
is a regional.
I called him, he's
emergency
the,
Planning board.
Emergency, right.
right,
And they haven't come to us.
he's the head of the emergency planning committee. He's our man in a case of emergency. I called the man, left him a message, asking him if we were going to be considered a secondary designation or one on this letter. I never got a return call. So I don't know, I didn't receive that letter as a formal request from this town to say yes. I mean, if we have agreements and they want to make it, absolutely, not anti-town at all. We're here for everybody. But let's just make sure that it's in the grand plan, because if I spend $50,000 today, and then we're gonna go and turn around and say, we want a bond to do this entire school, because we're gonna put a second story on it, and an addition off to the side, and we're gonna put another one over at Molly Stark, and we don't have $50,000 for a down payment to reduce it by X amount of years. I don't want that in my face either. So I think it needs to be a broader conversation, and if we can't put it out another month or whatever it is to invite the town here, then, you know what, then at least if it's gonna go to another district, it's within our reach, we can send people there if we have to as well. If it just comes down to that and we're
Well,
gonna
it
miss
has to
it.
do with buildings, it could come up at the 17th.
Well, maybe we would suggest, Ken, that you, Catherine, Rick, or whoever it is,
Invite Doucette here.
talk to the necessary people, and let's have a joint meeting and clear up the issue.
I'm available
Even
anytime.
if it doesn't have to be the 17th, it can be a special meeting
I
anytime.
know.
I'll so move.
I'll second it.
What are you?
We're going to vote to have a special meeting on it.
In other words, meet with the selectmen, meet with the police chief, meet with whoever,
Get
whatever
them to come
meeting you
meet
want
us
to
face
have.
to
The police
face.
chief is the head of the.
Give us the answers.
Right, he's the emergency
He's the
guy.
one who could,
But I don't know how tight his hands are, though. I mean, does the generator go? I mean,
it's safely secured someplace in a shed, right?
I respectfully request we move on the agenda.
Well, I don't think, do we need to
Would it be a
vote?
motion? We can just ask the administration to invite Paul to the next meeting just for a quick talk and see if he can give us some direction if we are going to be earmarked as one of the places in the town. Okay? All right. Kindergarten enrollment status.
Right. Let me do it this way.
Are these the people that are new ones attending?
Just, I'll do a little intro. We've been spending, as you know, since January, publicizing kindergarten registration, really looking at our database, siblings, contacting the preschool providers, childcare agencies, and really going all out as we always do to try to anticipate and confirm what our enrollments are. And as you know, you budgeted an additional kindergarten teacher because we anticipated having the numbers that we would need that. But we also agreed that we would not create that classroom until such time that we could see that we needed it. And what I can tell you is it's been very difficult and complex because we, even at the beginning of August, mid-August, had lower enrollments at Molly Stark and had started the process in July because we were at capacity in early July at Monument and Bennell for kindergarten. We started moving students into the Molly district and really looking at the attendance zones to move those students who are closest to those attendance zones. We ended up with many late registrations, even as many as 12 the last week of August.
Wow.
And as you can see, we're getting a lot of those are, well, you can't see by this chart, but a lot of those were from the Bennell area. So what we've ended up doing because of the late registrations was moving those students even the first day of school with a couple of walk-ins that actually happened to be in the Molly district, but we've been moving students into the Molly district from both the Monument attendance zone and the Bennell attendance zone. And it's been difficult because what's happened, of course, is that transportation is complicated as you do more and more of those movements. We spent a lot of time, actually it was last night, really going through where these students all landed and what we could possibly do. We've really tried to keep the enrollments into the 15 to 17 for kindergarten. That is the board policy with an agreed cap of 18. And then we watched it through the summer because you can't really create a class just when you cap at 18. You really need to see how many you have to hit that 15 number, 15 to 17 number to open a new classroom. And what really the situation we found ourselves faced with was potentially opening this class after school started, after the students were already attending out of attendance zone schools. Now, I've done that in larger cities, but I don't believe it's been done here historically, and part of our reason for looking at class size is not only the size and the relationship to the teacher, but also keeping the child in mind and not so many transitions and really keeping a continuous educational program. So we ended up actually last night offering to move another 5 in order to get the transportation in line. Still deciding not to open another class. And I'll ask Karen Burnell and the principals to just comment. What I will say is the parents have been extremely responsive and supportive, and every parent I spoke with, even though some of the discussions were very difficult at the beginning for moving out of the attendance zone, in the end, recognizing that the transportation was a complication and also that we are looking with you as board members to a long-range and a short-range solution. The parents have been very supportive in that. Every parent I've talked with on the phone today and over the last 2 days, after an initial concern about moving the student out of the attendance zone or then having them move back in if we had a vacancy, beyond that first concern, ended up talking with me about the long-term solution. We have to do something, and I think as Karen and Rick and the principals can tell you, because this predates me, we're back to a situation where Bennington was many years ago, or several years ago. So start with the principals and Karen, and then maybe Rick would weigh in from what we were doing last night with the transportation and trying to sort this out.
You go first since you took so many.
I'll go first because I took them all. As Catherine said, historically, we have come back to the board and said kindergarten is an issue. And we say this amongst ourselves over the summer. It just feels like it keeps getting worse. It keeps getting worse. And it's
because of registration timing and people letting us know when there's students.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we never are absolutely sure of what our kindergarten class numbers are going to be until school starts. And with the 12 enrolling the week before school starts
it's almost impossible to plan. It's a complex, complicated system, and we keep saying amongst ourselves, something has to change. We can't continue to do this. Not only is it stressful for administrators, but it's stressful for families.
Very
Where's my kid going? Where's my kid going to go to school? And, you know, solutions, I mean, my solution, and I don't know that it's right or wrong, if they're all in the same building, then they're all going to one school. They're all going to go to Bennington, they're all going to go to Monument, they're all going to Molly. At least you know where they're going to go. And if you get 12 kids that last week, that's where they're going to be. But that, I'm not advocating that we are asking the board to do that. That's the frustration level, that we have to do something different. And I think the other frustrating piece is, amongst lots of educators, we don't really know what the solution is, but we know that we cannot keep doing this. It keeps happening year after year, and we're in this position, and it makes for an incredibly stressful start to the school.
Can I ask a question? Is it, I mean, we've gotten from central office in the past, the transient numbers and the turnover in our schools. Is this not just 12 new kindergartners? Is this 12 new families with 3rd and 4th and 5th graders too? Are these families that are just bringing one child into the district, or is it placement of several different children? So even if you put your kindergartners all in one building, and I wouldn't support that because you've got the next year of transition again that you're dealing with. If it's still, where can you put that family of 3 that, for whatever reason, has found itself in Bennington at the end of August and is now, from wherever they came, whether it's across state lines or it's from the north to the south or the south to the north, then you're picking the school not just for the kindergarten. You're picking the school because you're looking at, and they're bringing a 3rd grader in, and they're bringing a 4th grader in too, and do I have room in that 3rd grade or room in that 4th grade to bring another student on?
I think it's a combination of all, because we actually had a number of people who have lived here for many years and just were not timely in giving the registration and actually took responsibility. I had 2 parents look me straight in the eye and say, it was my delay in getting the registration. I knew I needed to do it, but I didn't do it till the week before school. And they took responsibility for that and understood why we had to move them out of zone. But it was difficult. So I think it's a combination of those things, actually.
Because I think if our population is that transient, what I'm saying is that this is just almost like, it's you know, if it's not just the transient issue.
No, it is not. And we also had 32, I believe, Karen, that went to either moved out or went to private or parochial schools. Is that correct? Another 30.
So in addition to these numbers, there was 32 that moved out.
32.
We could have had 32 more people there.
So we would have had 2
Well,
more
some were
classes.
moving.
You have that every year.
Yeah, it's not an unusual number.
25 and 35 every year.
Thank you, Rick. It's not an unusual number, but it's worth making sure that you all know that that is there, and it averages about 25 to 30 anyway per year, is what I've been told.
I mean, transience is a piece, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But there are our own homegrown, so to speak, who we're just not getting the information from. I've been involved with Karen on this project, so to speak, for 14 years. When I was at Monument, we more or less coordinated with Karen to get all those registrations and get those names out. That process has changed over the years, so I'm not as closely involved in it as I have been in the past. Every year, we look at it and say, okay, we can change this to make it better, we can change that to make it better, we can advertise in this group better, we can make contacts with those community groups, we can try centralizing it, we can try decentralizing it. Every year, over the past 14 years, I've walked away saying, we've got to have a better way of doing this. And to be perfectly frank, this year has been like the worst of all possible years. I mean, it just seems increasingly difficult, despite all of our efforts to try to find a way to make it work.
Which actually have improved over the
Yeah.
last couple of years.
Yeah.
We've actually made great gains in
Yeah.
getting earlier registrations, which
But
is
you're
the
still at
irony.
10%, you're still
Right.
dealing with a 10%, I mean, it's a
Exactly.
10% swing.
Right, so I guess,
There's nothing you can do with the people just move in. I mean, there's no, I don't know.
This is a mixture
but
of moving.
but a piece of it, I guess, in my whining, if you want to call it that, at the moment, is at some point, we really need to be coming to you and saying, here's a recommendation that, we really need you to endorse, because
And
it's
that's-
one more of those, like, we got to get a handle on this, and we hope that this is the way to do it.
Is it to reserve, I mean, are you thinking of scrapping attendance zones? Are you thinking of reserving until 2 weeks before school that, this is where you're going? I mean, there's a lot of anticipation when there's a kindergartner and there's lots of transition and camp and everything else about going and, I mean, some of these people who dropped the ball, I mean, their students didn't even get evaluated. They didn't even get the
That's right.
benefit of
Yeah.
early identification and potential services
And we're trying
in
now,
anticipation of school.
We need to place them. and we
Right.
don't have-
So where did where did the class sizes wind up? Where are we on the class
We're
sizes?
not happy. Go
Mine
ahead.
has 18
Right.
currently.
There's 2 at 18, 2 at 19.
20 and 18?
And we're still waiting on one that might.
You
come to
actually have
Monument.
the
Did
one
they
word
say yes?
today. Yeah,
Okay,
called me
so
right
that
back.
will be 19 at Monument.
Monument.
And I just think the bigger picture that we also talked about was, each school has limitations, but you have families that live in certain districts and really honor, it doesn't matter which school it is. They want to go to Molly. They want to go to Bennell. They live in that area. And it just doesn't feel good to have a conversation with the family to say, we're full. You're full?
Right.
And early.
Especially
End of June,
if they're
beginning of
siblings.
July.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the first year, we actually, last year when we were dealing with the movement into Monument, because we had your support to open that second kindergarten last year, we tried to honor not splitting families, which has been a long history in this supervisory union, and especially in Bennington. And we ended up this year splitting families, a few, not many, but more than we wanted.
So Jim, if you're at 18 and 20, the number 40 here has been modified?
Well, there's a, there's a point in time in which the number is taken. So, I mean, and this was actually generated this afternoon.
Okay.
I lost a student at 2 o'clock this afternoon, so I mean, it's kind of a moving
Okay,
target
it's a
all the
moving
time.
target.
I actually approved a move from Bennell into Monument at 6:15 tonight.
One of those is also on May
What's that?
That was your,
Wait a minute.
the one that was on your list already.
Kindergarten?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I think they were from Monument. I mean, Mom.
Oh, it's from Molly? I'm sorry.
I think it's from Molly.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay,
I'm
good.
sorry, it
Okay.
wasn't Bennell,
I
it was
thought it was
Molly.
somebody
You're
else.
right, I'm sorry, thank you for correcting me.
Thank you.
It was from Molly.
Okay.
So we have 129 kindergarten.
Yes.
So that's right, that's 129 students.
Over 7 classrooms?
Yeah.
Well, just so you know, we thought last April we had between 130 and 135.
That's why you proposed that extra teacher.
Right, exactly, an additional teacher.
Okay, so then,
But the timing of opening that classroom didn't
But not
coincide.
right, because if you start to try to redistribute, you'd have and if you took 2 from each classroom,
It would be a horror story.
yeah.
We talked about doing that.
All these
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And redistributing,
Four
yeah,
classes.
again.
It would disrupt the classes at Molly because they're already distributed among them. And we did, Lori, we actually tried one of the things that this year that you suggested that I don't think we did before, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong. But we actually in July ended up holding off assigning schools for several weeks and just told parents, we cannot tell you where your child is going to be because we're watching the numbers. And then I think in August, we started again at the beginning of August.
To do assignments.
To do
Because
assignments
you're getting more
based on
confident,
where
but
we were.
then.
We were trying to give that extra room to see because, as you know, students move out as well as in, and we ended up with that happening at Monument, where we closed Monument very early at the end of June, and then ended up just last week having one opening and then deciding to take it to 19.
You know, it seems to me there's no real way that you can plan for people moving in or people that are remiss and bring their children in on the first day after everybody else signed them up in April. I mean, I don't know what kind of plan you can't say, well, we're going to expect 10 more in each school. I mean, that's.
Well, maybe our pre-K program, I mean, certainly with our
That is exactly
four-year-old
where we're
program
going.
gives us many more touch points for that registration, because we're going to have, I mean, it sounds like you're getting 90% of them.
I just think there's no foolproof way of doing this, that's the problem.
Karen will talk a little bit about how we'll merge that registration.
What I'm expecting to do, and we talked about it administratively, is to, pre-K is part of the system. We're using education fund dollars, so what we're going to do is have every pre-K child do the full enrollment packet. And so the children will actually be enrolled as a 4-year-old, so whatever number we end up with, we'll have an enrollment packet for them. We'll get the birth certificate, the immunization records, and the proof of residency. Typically with pre-K, whatever community facility they're already in, they're already doing an enrollment packet, so we typically have used their information and put in as much as we needed in Infinite Campus to have them be part of our database. But we're going to extend it further. And then we talked about doing, and we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do yet, but having parents do some kind of an update so that we will know about their address and all of that. And then children would be promoted rather than enrolled at K. So that will help us. But, you know, I also keep going back to the community needs assessment, which, you know, Catherine said we started in January. Actually, we're doing that back in November. And it was December where we really felt we had a handle on the number of children. But then as we went through the enrollment process, even though, again, we changed, Jim's right, you know, we're always reflecting, okay, let's change this, let's change that. What we were watching is people enrolling, and we were only about 108 at one point because we were watching this whole group that, you know we always see move out. So it is that, you know, it's about almost a 20% of the population that is causing this challenge for us. And so I think if we can enroll at the pre-K level and do that, you know, just pass them on to kindergarten. And the person in my department is very skilled in being able to put everything into Infinite Campus, so I know that will be done accurately. And then doing some kind of update, that will help us, but will it solve the problem? I don't know. We go back to the same issue that Donna Mackenzie King was talking about, is it's hard. And if you think about the whole purpose of doing pre-K, connecting to the schools, if you recognize the importance of transition, we should be able to tell families far in advance what school they're going to. We shouldn't be waiting 2 weeks before, because the research says that, you know, you want those family connections. You want the families to get engaged. You look at our, you know, our partners in Shaftesbury and North Bennington, the kids come in to the school as pre-K children from January to May. They have many opportunities. The children have the opportunities, the parents have the opportunities. Now, I know it's much harder here because we have 3 buildings, but our Bennington children deserve the same type of transition opportunities as the other children do. So we really have to crack this egg somehow. We've spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, all of us, to figure this out when we should be putting it into instruction and we should be putting it into changes for kids, not just looking at enrollment. So it's tough. It's tough.
Just a simple question though, as far as like, go to outside of our local SU and you go to Rutland or you go to any other larger town that has a larger population that, I assume they must have more than one elementary school within their areas. So how is it, I mean, are we beating a dead horse here? So I mean, how do they manage that where they have the transits from one side of the street to the other and different things like that?
I actually go to a regional meeting and I can ask about those, but I can tell you from being in an urban district, you open classrooms after school starts and you shift students. And that's how it's done typically. You create new classrooms, you move teachers, you hire new teachers, and you open new classrooms. But we'll do a call and just see, because each community in Vermont is so different, but there are some that are very comparable to us. Brattleboro, certainly Rutland, maybe not in size, but in some of the demographic, and Burlington. So I can call those three and find out how they handle it.
How is it managed there? So I mean, that's what we were talking about. I mean, you were saying if we take 2 out here, 3 out here, 4 out of there, basically to open up a classroom, what happens there when that happens?
When we don't have the space to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's
It's a
part
piece
of
of-
the dilemma.
We had space for one. We could open one.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. You were talking about one kindergarten teacher here
They
now.
get portable classrooms, and they open that way, done that. But these are urban areas that have, 17,000 students.
Right.
It's very different. So we're sort of in that middle end. We're actually educationally in a perfect size for the supervisory union of 3,000. The governance system makes it a little difficult with the separate employing boards and independent districts. But, so size-wise, we're at a good size for instructional approaches, but we're kind of in an awkward size for any of the larger term shifts that you can do, or smaller and not having as many shifts. But I thought I'd ask Rick just to talk about the transportation and what we analyzed last night.
Well, the difficulty in the transportation is compounded by our No Child Left Behind requirements, for over the past few years that has exacerbated some of this problem at the upper levels beyond the kindergarten level. But, when we looked at the transportation, there was, a dozen, 15 kids that were just we couldn't solve the problem with the routes we had. And we had to have Suburbans driving with 3 or 4 kids all over God's creation, passing each other on the street, waving, saying, hi, how you doing? I made the executive decision, we would do that for this week to try to figure out what in the world's going on, and we'll get the kids home and get them to school. But we couldn't survive a year like this because it was going to cost us a fortune. And so we worked hard all week long, solved half a dozen of them, maybe
Yeah,
8.
we did.
Got them moved around, got them fixed, created some of these awkward class sizes, but, we had to make some difficult choices. And, then it came down to those last 6 or 7 kids, and, and I don't know if anybody ever wrote down our options last night. I wrote them on the whiteboard, but I never wrote them down. But I mean, our options is we're going to have to add another bus. And depending on how we structure the routes, it's either going to be a half a bus because you're sharing with Mount Anthony, or a whole bus, but probably a half, I hope. Or we got to grow Benell's class sizes to 22 or 23. Or the option is to pull, if you look at that chart you've got there in Molly, you've got 17 kids, pull 17 of those kids out of Molly, plop them over here, which is going to rebalance all of Molly's classes, and going to have to balance some of Benell's classes. Move a teacher, back up a truck to the room, bring your furniture over here. And
But
were
we putting it here?
that our
Originally?
suggestion to the board was going to be that, for the best interest of the students, that you authorize us to buy or rent or lease or whatever, whatever you want to determine we do for it, another bus route. You know, it's probably, I'm guessing it's gonna be about $25,000. We're gonna have to take it out of the kindergarten teacher that we didn't hire, that salary, which is gonna reduce Jim's behavior specialist by some fraction of an FTE. But we think that's the best recommendation.
That was
The best thing for the students at this point in time. I apologize for being a little blunt, but it's late in the night, it's been a long week. But, I think it's time that you recognize the 4,000-pound gorilla. You got a facility problem. And your biggest facility problem, I mean, if I had 3 buildings with 20 classrooms each, this isn't a problem. But I've got one with 20, one with 14, and one with 7. And you've got an enrollment policy that says K through 3 is going to be between 15 and 17, 18,
capping at
whatever
18.
that number is. And then it can go up to 24. So 3 or 4 years down the road, when you matriculate those kids through, you're not going to have enough classrooms in 4 to 5 years to satisfy the class sizes of the enrollment of the class size policy you guys have created.
Or there would be a lot of joint classes, mixed 3, 4s, 4, 5s. Plus.
Well, we were gonna get numbers, we were gonna get numbers, that were, I thought they were a handout.
I think we've given anticipated enrollments.
Is this up to date?
Yeah. Oh, for the FYI, we didn't bring them.
Okay, just to see the distribution in each classroom.
Yeah, we will.
This has been the worst year. It has been a horrendous year, and I haven't done it as long as some of these guys have done it, but it's been a horrible year. And I'll tell you right now, and I believe I told you guys last April, next year is going to be 10 times worse. Because it's not going to get better. The longer we stick our head in the sand, this thing's going to get worse and worse. And I am shocked at how gracious and cooperative our parents have been.
They have. They've been
I can't thank them enough. They have been fantastic.
They have. And they're very hopeful about long-range planning and this programmatic study that we're doing.
I guess I've said enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's not an easy task what you guys are doing.
I'm not gonna bring up old wounds, but I know there's
Yes,
some
you
people
are.
sitting at this table when we unloaded 2 buildings across the street with a statement that said, we aren't gonna need them, we don't want them, and they're all gone, and here we are, how many years after, facing a serious building problem. I don't even want to hear the 101 reasons why, because I don't buy any of them, and I can give you lots of reasons why.
I'll just.
I know,
I'll respectfully disagree with you
I've
for a
talked
lot of
to,
reasons.
and I know, and I've talked, I was superintendent also, and I've talked to many people about the whole thing.
We don't have the money to repair the 3 we have right now. That would have been, that's like the what's the show that you go and you just keep throwing more and more in and money, I mean, exactly, money pit. So, I mean, it seems to me that our facility plan and our focus has been, and I remember coming onto the board right after that was done, was that, and that's 5 years ago now, we're gonna re-energize the 3 buildings that we have, or possibly even consider further consolidation into 2, because you can't, and to really go out to the voters and say, and we need $25 million. We need a new school.
We do.
We need a new school. And we have it, and we had an economic issues and other things, but at some point, we just have to, the community wants it. They don't want to pay for it, but we all have to, I mean, if we're going to make that investment, I think we have to be bold, and we have to say it's time to do it.
This year.
And programmatically, the educational support, for all the educational regions, but also because it doesn't make any sense.
And Rick is right, it's not gonna be any better a year from today.
Or 5 years from today.
Right.
Or 5 years from today.
Yep.
So, but I think we just need to, so keeping that is not the solution.
No,
The
well,
solution is
it's
to say.
history now.
Well, I know, but we wouldn't have had the money to repair what we would have to repair over there.
It's beautiful.
Well, it puts us where we need to be to invest in a building of today's standards. And to put things in place that allow us to deliver an education and in an environment that promotes it.
So we'll be talking about all this stuff on the 17th, or the
Yes,
24th,
exactly.
whatever
That's
it
what we're
is.
going to be talking about.
Okay,
I need authority to buy a bus.
Oh, so moved.
is it gonna be one of those smaller?
I'll second it,
buses?
yes, it
No,
is.
we already have it, I just.
Got to pay.
Authorization.
We already
Bennington
have.
has 20 buses, you guys currently use 11, I just need authority to work with Dufour to grow.
Oh, I see. You mean
your used
contract.
existing
Please
buses.
do it.
So,
So moved.
so, second,
Any more discussion?
Finish the motion, please.
We need an extra bus for,
Authorize the school district to expand its bus route.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Unanimous.
Good. Thank you so much.
I don't know if
Claude?
Claude voted yes?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Please.
Okay, we're gonna skip 6, the gold mission next time. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
so moved.
Can I just abstain? I wasn't here for the meeting, the minutes on August 1st. Yep. So you can just pull those out? Is that the only thing on the
I thought you
consent
were here,
agenda?
Lori.
I wasn't here on August 1st.
Are those the minutes we're not
Over at middle
using?
school or the office?
Oh, the warrants are there too.
Right.
The warrants, right. So can we just, can you move the warrants?
Yes, okay, can we have a?
So moved that we
second,
move
just
the warrants.
Okay, you have a question?
No, all right.
Okay.
All those in favor of the warrants? Unanimous. Now the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes.
I'll second it.
Motion and second discussion. Seeing none, all in favor of the minutes? 5. Those abstaining?
Abstaining.
Thank you. Okay, community reports, the food service is meeting on the 20th, so we won't worry about that. SVSU Technology, I guess they haven't had their meeting yet. The first meeting will be in September.
No, I can just tell you that they.
We did? I'm sorry.
Well, no, they did have a meeting, but Frank Barnes did put on the web, you should have gotten an email
I did.
of his new magazine he's just launched.
He sort of set up his own personal newspaper, and
I think
he's
he only
sending out
included board members
with
that were on the
articles on
committee.
education with computers.
Well, then maybe you could have it
Sure.
redistributed.
Yep.
to all
No,
board
I
members.
guess it's
Sure.
for all board members. I just haven't opened my email today.
Me and Frank would have one. Sure.
Just around technology, if I can. What's the process and turnaround time for new hire, when we get new hires for their profiles to get created, to be able to get into the campus and all the stuff and resources that they need to have?
For the new hires?
For new hires that come into the district and stuff like, so that they have
They have an
the
account.
their email setups and,
Yep.
you know, profiles created. How
They
do,
do.
what is the turnaround typically for that type of stuff?
I don't know that I could tell you that, because we're still hiring. We just were hiring last week for some of the positions at the middle school. So it's as quick as we can turn it around. Usually comes out of personnel with the personnel items to set up the emails, and then each new staff member has a mentor, teacher mentor in their building that works with them on curricular orientation and assessment orientation, things like that. But as far as the technology, it's the building tech people that would connect with that new hire in the classroom to show them the technology that they would have. And I think also the principals play a role in just making sure that that's happening.
And the other thing is, you know, on that list of technology still, and I'm gonna bring it, she's not here today, but the websites, the content, the consistency.
Lori Mulhern.
Yeah, updating and keeping that
Yep, I think
consistent.
that's what
I've gone
Frank
to
was gonna
all of
address.
them, and I can tell you that I'm gonna start using, that's gonna be my method of using, and if it doesn't work, it's not gonna work, you know, it's gonna, but, you know, we just gotta make sure that that stays on the forefront there. And all I wanna know is, who do I talk to get my password for, and username for the SVSU email?
You got it?
Talk to Frank about that.
Yeah, no, I know who to talk to.
I'm guessing the username is probably just SVSU, your name, and svsu.org. I just don't know what my password is, so I can go in.
They may have set it up. Are you getting emails?
I am, but I want to go to
Yeah,
that,
I think
I
it's
want to go to that
fast.
email. I want to
Yeah,
go into that
it's fast.
SVSU email.
Got it.
Catherine,
Yes.
we also get a list of the, if it's private, of the board members and their new emails and things. We used to have a
Yeah, I
sheet,
thought- yeah.
because many of ours have changed.
Yeah, I know, I can't ever get you.
Well, and we have a new
No, and I
address.
can't get you either, and I
So we
gotta
have
know.
new addresses and new emails as well, so let's get
Can
that
we
up.
get a sheet
Yes,
with all of them?
absolutely. Yeah, we routinely update
In the
those.
entire district.
Sure.
Like an SVSU board.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything else, Paul?
No, thank you.
Vacancy update?
Yeah, I'll just let the principals quickly list their vacancies or share their vacancies.
The behavior specialist, which time seems to be fluctuating, and I have three paraprofessional vacancies to fill.
So what's it gonna be now?
Pardon me?
The behavior specialist?
We'll come back
We'll
to
have
the
to-
next
Oh,
meeting.
there's two?
See what the percentage can be, given
Yeah,
the
given the
new
bus piece,
deductions.
once we know the bus piece. And we'll come back, and we have some options. We have a .1 left in the SU budget, so we may do a combination of SU funding and VSD funding.
You have
So-
3 paras openings?
Three paraprofessional vacancies. We do have some applicants. The pool is not deep, but we do have some, and there seems some potential there.
I have a title reading position open.
Applicants.
Yes.
And I have the reading specialist. We posted once again and did not find a suitable applicant with certification for that position.
Or experience.
Or experience. And that's really a very, very clear need for our school improvement, so not willing to settle.
Re-advertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have.
We just closed another.
We have. And what we'll do is look at the pool at Molly Stark too, and just see if we're getting different, we'll share. Make sure that-
It's getting late, so it's an oversight. We have a title math teacher that we have some interviews set up for next week.
The title reading at Molly, is that in addition to, or?
The person
Thought
that
we were-
was, that's,
We had a title teacher.
We held one in recently. Okay. And-
Yes. It's not the same.
Okay, I was just curious.
Somebody here moved from title into classroom
Okay.
that visited tonight. Somebody who was here who had visited tonight, she had moved into your third grade classroom.
Okay, right, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, do you wanna?
And then I think we had, just to be quick, we had a wonderful opening day, really integrating community members. Claude was able to visit, Ken came as well. We had a lot of good feedback on next steps, so now we're ready to really get in and tackle what those next steps would be. But we had a very, very good response from both the teachers as well as the community members that were involved. And I'm hoping that with the work development councils that teachers can serve on, that we'll get more membership in those. So we'll keep reporting on that. We had a smooth opening of school for the first day, in spite of our kindergarten out-of-zone attendees. All of the students were welcomed and made to feel a part of the schools. So it was very smooth. And I have, as an FYI to give out, the others I'll put on the next agenda, but this one is just showing you the current enrollments and on the first day of school. So you'll see Bennell with a 2-student differential here, but the others do match. And this shows the attendance on the 4th opening day and the enrollments that we had on that opening day. I just thought it would be interesting to see that.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the maintenance custodian job description.
I have to ask Jerry on that. Can I ask him?
Yep.
Jerry, on this job description, and when the application or the information went into the banner, it's got certificates, licenses, and registrations, valid driver's license, CPR and first aid, level 1 state of Vermont fire extinguisher certification. There's nothing here that says that there may be somebody out there. Should there not be something you're saying that after they're hired, that we would allow them time to get that?
Definitely.
Well, but it doesn't say that.
Well, we would do that. This job description hasn't gone before anybody. I just sent out for applications.
But should we not say that, Rick, that, I know,
My opinion is you don't have to say that in there, they have to have it, and we'll give them a reasonable time if someone demonstrates that they are capable of getting those various certifications. This was developed from a template from the School Board's Insurance Trust, from Liberty Mutual, our workers' comp insurance carrier, and working with various people within our district to try to develop what we think is an appropriate job description going forward.
but if somebody came in and picked up this, should we not have something down there that says time would be allowed for that person? Because some of these people would read that and say, I'd like to apply, but I don't have this, and might not even ask, so I think we're shutting the door on some.
We could add that.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to bring up to the board, because of the hour, I'll wait till next time, but let me just tell you what it is that I would like to ask the Bennington School District Board to see if we can't develop some substitute people along the field of maintenance. I've had the occasion to meet with 2 people that are semi-retired and retired that would be very happy to be called in, that have worked for the Bennington School District if such a program was available and offered. That might help Jerry and Rick out.
I mean, I want to speak for Jerry.
They don't want full-time work, they just said that.
Well, no, Jerry can speak, but I mean, we have one now, we have a recent retiree that said, I'd be willing to come in and work part-time. And all they have to do, if you run across them like that, send them down to fill out our sub-application work. The type of sub they want to work for, and.
I think we've got to advertise it a little bit more.
I mean, I don't think we need a formal program. I mean,
Oh, I don't think so either, but I think we got to let people know about it.
So they're just the normal sub, whatever it is? So when I think of sub in the education, I think of a substitute teacher, is what comes to my mind, but just that same, if people were interested in that.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't know what the sub paperwork looks like.
Okay. All right.
You know, so, I mean, I'm assuming they choose what they want to sub for.
Okay.
And if that's not on there, we'll certainly put it on there, but we do have some that have, you know, said that I'll come back and be a crossing guard for a couple of days, or I'll, you know, push a mop for 2 or 3 days. I don't want full-time work, but I'm willing to give you 2 or 3 days here and there. And, but I do need an action to approve this, as amended with George's amendment, if you don't mind.
So moved.
Can I ask a question when you guys develop this?
Second.
Oh,
Before
discussion.
you ask a question.
All right.
I'll ask.
All right.
Now you can ask, Paul.
Sorry.
He's slapping me, that's why I did that.
When you develop this with all the parties involved, the insurance company and was it the Vermont State Board, you said, or something like that?
School Board Insurance Trust.
School Board Insurance Trust. So with the way this is a maintenance custodial position, are we going to look to hire, my impressions are, the way we operate, we have custodians and we have maintenance. Are we looking to unify, and we're going to hire someone that can do all of these skills, so that if, you know, you have roof repair, we have some construction work in here, so we're going to need someone that can do that, but they may be primarily doing custodial work? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
I'll leave it to Jerry, he can answer it more clearly.
What's always happened in the past is my custodians, it never had covered for maintenance, but maintenance is always covered for custodial. And you have the situation where sometimes maintenance is out, you're never done. And it's not my job because they were hired. I'm not saying that came up, but that's what could be said. If you take and do a joint maintenance custodian, then you covered it all. You switch them wherever you want them, wherever you need them. There's no this, that, or the next thing. You can train everybody to do everybody's job. And it's a more efficient, better workforce, based on my estimation. That's what, it's over the years of doing this, you kind of make it better. And that's, coming up to do it this time, that seems to be the logical thing to do, so we can have a better free flow of all the people. Everybody knows everybody's job.
All right, that's all I need to know, is that it's basically a different style of managing it going forward versus, you have a hierarchy structure now where the top can come down and do the lower skills, but the lower skills can't necessarily go up and do the higher skills. So, I mean, if you're gonna manage it all the way around so that they can intermingle, then that's.
Yeah, and I would be naive to think that we're gonna have 6 guys that can do everything across that entire spectrum. We're hoping that we can marry them in the middle somewhere, and we can get a little bit of flexibility.
I had a question about refreshing. Right now, we have 2 of our maintenance men covering 2 of the custodial positions in the building, right?
Yep.
But we still have 1 maintenance man and yourself.
On the outside.
On the outside, okay.
Your staff of 6 or 5, how many?
6 when they're fully staffed, right?
Yep.
Including yourself?
No.
7 of them. So you have 3 still remaining now,
4 still.
including Jerry.
3 buildings.
4
1
or
outside.
You got 5 including him.
2 vacancies.
2
Down
vacancies.
2.
Huh, okay.
Call the question. Can I call the question?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor of the job description with George's amendments? Unanimous. Okay, we have no policies. Just remind, the meeting is a mistake on our warning here. It's, the next BSD meeting is Monday the 17th, not the 20th. VSBA meeting, again, October 25, 26, Lake Maury. And I just want to give a plug in, I know it's late, but 4 Winds Science Program, we always need volunteers. There'll be training on the 24th, Monday of September, 9 o'clock, here at Bennington Elementary School. Nick covers volunteers for Monument, Molly, and Bennington. Everybody's welcome.
Science, you said?
9 o'clock, I'm ready.
How long does it take?
No. And they do have refreshments.
I'm not worried about the refreshment.
Okay, and task list,
Oh, yeah, back to me. Collaborative time status. Has there been progress? Still working on collaborating time consistency. There really is no due date whenever you guys get around to telling us about it. I'm tired. Unemployment insurance rates, Rick's gonna come to the November, December meeting and let us know about that. Come before BSD and let us know enrollment and report on status, for pre-K.
Yep.
Karen, in October meeting. Administration to ask Paul to set to next meeting, ask if we are going to be a designated emergency center. Rick and Catherine, next meeting. Who does Paul talk to? And principals and building tech anyways. About getting your email. Get list of board members and emails and telephones, Catherine.
Yes.
And it will come in the mail.
And then a review of the task lists and starting to put them on the agenda, starting to making sure that we close the loop on some of those. And some of those were already mentioned, technology, TBIS.
Catherine, do we need a short executive session?
Actually, I can, unless you have specific questions about a recent newspaper
Do we
article, I
have
can wait.
information? Do we need one tonight?
You don't need it, it's not
Thank
necessary
you.
unless you have questions.
Can you email us an update?
Yes, I can email you.
So moved.
Thank you.
all in favor? Unanimous.
No, no worries.
What's the matter?